Hey everyone, I'm here with Sarah Smith, congressional candidate running to represent Washington State's 9th congressional district, and she's returning on my program now for I think the third time. She was on Establishment Exiles once, I interviewed her once, and now she's back because her primary is coming up soon. Sarah, welcome back, and tell us the date of your primary.
Thank you so much for having me. It's so glad to be back.
It's always fun to have you on.
Oh, thank you. So our ballots are we're mail-in. Our ballots are already in the mail right now, but the last day to turn them in, so the last day to turn your ballot in is August 7th. So that's our primary day, is August 7th.
Yeah, so this is definitely a race to watch. I don't know if many of you know this, but Sarah Smith is actually one of the original Justice Democrats, and she got a really nice boost after the victory of Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. I remember seeing an article. I don't remember the publication, so they'll have to forgive me for not being able to give them credit, but talking about how you might be the next Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. You got a big shout out from her. So things are looking a lot different now than the last time we talked. So tell us what's happened, because you've kind of gotten a huge boost.
Yeah, things took off after Alex's victory. It was Seattle Weekly was the publication that actually called. That was really intimidating for me because I respect Alex a lot. I've known her since I started. We affectionately called it Congress Camp together. Where we all learned the ins and outs. We learned how to interview, all that stuff. We kind of went through a 4-day crash course of Congress Camp, and she was we met at the original first summit. So that was really, really cool. But things have changed dramatically since her win. So where we were being iced out by a lot of mainstream media, even by local media, where nobody was really taking us seriously, and my incumbent was kind of brushing us off and not really too worried about it. All of a sudden, it was overnight. She won, and I was texting all the other JDs. I was like, this is awesome. All the other brand new Congress people. Me and Rob Ryerson in Arkansas still talk all the time. And he was like, no, she won. And we were going bananas. And then the next morning I woke up and I was so excited that I actually woke up at 5 o'clock in the morning, which is a half hour before my alarm. And I started checking my email, and my campaign email just surged. I went from, this is going to sound horrible, I went from 108 unread emails to 391 unread emails. Wow. Because I'm that person that never clears all my email notifications.
Same here. Same here.
We did an interview with Q13 Fox News. The Seattle Times scheduled one with us on Tuesday. The South Seattle Emerald did one with us. Seattle Weekly did one with us. We've got a forum coming up, or a forum that it's on Saturday. It's the League of Women Voters. Oh my gosh, what else is happening? There's so much happening. I finally had the opportunity to leave my job, which was really great.
Wow.
Our fundraising picked up, and I've only been at it full time for a couple of days, and I already don't know how I did it before.
Yeah, I don't know how you guys did it either. You were doing a lot. You had to have not had any free time to yourself.
It was really hard, and this might be a little surprising. I tend to be a little bit of introverted extrovert is the phrase that everyone uses, where I love people, I'm very social, and then I'll just suddenly be like, okay, I'm done. I just need like a minute to myself. And so finding that balance and trying to breathe is really, really hard. That's actually something that I try to encourage other candidates to do. I'm fortunate enough that I have a volunteer who actually sends me text messages throughout the day, and he's like, did you remember to drink water? Did you remember to eat today? Have you taken 30 minutes without your phone? So he's really, really good about keeping up on me. And there's times when I'm like, I haven't consumed any water today, and it's 3 o'clock in the afternoon. But it's those little moments of reminding me to take a second to breathe in all the chaos that's going on. But we've really picked up our volunteer force. We just figured out the numbers. We have 71 active volunteers.
That's amazing.
So it's not people that are just sitting in our email list or that keep RSVPing. It's people that are showing up, that are phone banking, that are face banking, that are text banking, that are out canvassing. We have got a core team of canvassers that are now spread out among the district, and they're running their own canvassings now. We have banners, we have street signs coming in on Friday. We've got posters that are going up all over the place. We really surged, and we picked up, and we got our campaign office, which is amazing.
That's big.
And it's not a physically huge office. It's probably the size of the one I'm in now, but it's ours, and it's a place for everyone to come and meet, and it's a great facility, and I love having all the campaign stuff there. My husband loves having all the campaign stuff there.
Yeah, I bet.
Oh yes, but it's been crazy since Alex's win. It's been huge.
there's just this new, I felt like new life has been breathed into the progressive movement, because we kind of
Oh
had
yeah.
this period of time where we all kind of felt like we've been punched in the gut. I mean, it was after Allison Hartson lost and David
Yeah.
Hildebrand as well, two progressives in, the Dianne Feinstein race. And
Yeah.
now everybody is really surging. And I met one of your volunteers actually at the Jimmy Dore show.
Oh,
Super excited about your campaign.
yes.
And you could just
Awesome.
feel that energy. It's like people really feel rejuvenated. They know that we have a chance now. So
Yeah.
now that you actually have the ear of people in the establishment, perhaps more people may see this than the last interview, I really want you to take the time to explain the differences between you and your opponent, Adam Smith, because it's like night and day. So what is it about Adam Smith that makes him not progressive, even if it is the case that members of the Democratic Party establishment like to characterize him as a progressive?
Sure. So Adam Smith he's a war hawk. That's
Mhm.
what he is, plain and simple. He takes thousands and thousands of dollars from the military industrial complex, from the defense industry. He takes all this money from the defense industry and he does things like he votes in favor of the Iraq War. He votes in favor of extending the Patriot Act. He's done a lot of things. And I think one of the key differences between me and Adam is always late to the party. He is always not, he's never on the forefront. He's always dragging his feet. And I mean, the fact is that Adam sits and waits for other progressive women in Congress to take action and move forwards and have bold legislation. And then he tries to ride their coattails into the sunset and act like he was there the whole time. But where Adam is just coming to these conclusions, I started at these conclusions. Back in November of 2017, I signed on to a part of brand new Congress's platform to abolish ICE. And that was November of 2017. And he's been saying he's not for it. He doesn't like the idea. He was one of two Democrats that voted to create ICE in the beginning. And he, all of a sudden, after we had our endorsement panel at a local magazine called The Stranger, I said I'm in favor of abolishing ICE. He said he's not. And then a week later, I kid you not, a week later, he decides, actually, we really do need to abolish ICE. I'm totally in favor of it. I co-sponsored a bill with Pramila. Again, a progressive woman leading the charge loudly and proudly, not having to be prompted, not having to be told what to do. And all of a sudden he jumps on her coattails and he's like, yeah, that. Where Adam comes to these conclusions, I started there. So if he's got no vision left, move aside. It's time for the next generation of unbought, unpurchased Democrats. And that's the biggest key difference between me and Adam, is that I'm not bought and paid for, and he is. And it shows in his votes, it shows in his history. And it's time that he step down and move on and pass the baton to a progressive woman who can lead.
Exactly. It's kind of this option that individuals in the 9th district have. They can have someone who is a counterfeit progressive, or someone like you who's leading on progressive issues. I mean, again, saying that you were there on Abolish ICE months before any of us were talking about it, that is leadership that I think people in the 9th district deserve, because they are progressive. They want someone like you. It's just a matter of, I think, getting your name out there. Now, you touched on Pramila. I do want to ask you about the endorsement,
Sure.
because she is one of the most progressive people in Congress. When you look at her record, undoubtedly, you can't take anything away from that. But she endorsed Adam Smith over you, and I tweeted about it. Some progressives are a little bit hurt by it. So I just wanted to get your response.
Of course. So I completely understand. And when we were first asked about it, it took my team 15, 20 minutes to find the endorsement at all. So it tells me a lot. The endorsement is nothing she's announced. There was an original reporter who dug into the story, Walter Yates, and he went through her social media for, I think he said it like about 3 months or 3 weeks or something like that. He went through for a prolonged period of time, Twitter, Facebook, emails, everything, not a whisper of it. And it's not even listed on her campaign website. It's actually listed on her House of Representatives websites, on her endorsement document at the very bottom. And I've got to say, it tells me a lot about what I need to know about that endorsement. From, if I had to wager a guess, some kind of agreement was arrived at, some kind of backdoor deal got taken or took place. And it's convenient for me to look at to see, oh, okay, Adam co-sponsored her bill. Oh, and she endorsed him. Gee, I wonder if those things are tied together. So I try to keep in the back of my mind that she is also still a representative in Congress who's trying to fight to get legislation passed. And I think that she is, it doesn't seem to me like an endorsement she's singing from the rooftops. So it's entirely possible a deal was made in order to help her get legislation passed or co-sponsored or something like that. And she was strong-armed. And I choose to believe that because Pramila has been about progressive values from the beginning. She always has been. And I try to choose to believe, to see the good in people and see the circumstance and the whole picture. So to me, I think this was a strong arming more than anything. I think something like a big push against it, if people are really enthusiastic about that, if they really want her to change her endorsement, I mean, of course, I'm fine with it. I totally understand and agree and would love to have an endorsement from Pramila Jayapal. But I think that if that's something we want to push on, I don't think that's going to be a hard thing to make happen if the progressive movement can coalesce and put some pressure. Because I mean, you know, Ro Khanna, he's amazing. He did the right thing. He stepped up. He dual endorsed, and he's reached out to me and he's like, hey, just so you know, I'm not going to get involved in your race, but I think what you're doing is amazing. Let me know if you need anything. So I think that's the right attitude to take, because personally, whether or not there's a deal there, whether or not there's something on the table, whether or not you're going to get something out of it, I think that if you have another progressive running in a race, if you have another Justice Democrat, a slate member, something like that, and you're being pushed to endorse, just stay out. Just don't endorse at all. That's, I think, the best practice is silence in those cases. Nobody can force you to endorse. And at some point you have to just stand on your morals and say, absolutely not. But I understand that Congress is complicated and hard. And so I'm trying to be empathetic, regardless of my own personal feelings about it.
Right. And I get where you're coming from, because you may be in that position where there's going to be a new slate of Justice Democrats in 2020. And, you know, it's going to be awkward for you to endorse people who aren't your colleagues. So I think that you have a really a measured response to this, because when I saw it, I had that visceral, what the hell, you know?
Me too. At first.
Yeah, it's tough. It's tough because, you know, endorsements, they mean a lot. I don't necessarily know the weight that, you know, that endorsement will have, you know, in Washington's 9th congressional district. But it's just kind of like, you know, if you're really trying to basically further this progressive movement, you know, you got to come out and show us that you're fighting on the ground with us. So yeah,
exactly.
Thanks for responding to that. That was something that I definitely wanted to get your take. I saw that today and I'm like, oh, I'm talking to Sarah. So perfect.
Yes. And I completely understand everyone and their feelings about it. I totally understand. I absolutely share it. But I think as far as whether or not it holds any weight, I mean, the Washington State Democratic Party Progressive Caucus has endorsed me. Demand Universal Healthcare has endorsed me.
Awesome.
Progressive Party endorsed me. Our Revolution King County and Pierce County endorsed me. DSA and Olympia endorsed me. So it really doesn't carry a big weight if you can't get any other progressive organizations on board with you. And I think that's part of the reason why it's so difficult to find.
Right. That makes sense. You have all the progressive movement behind you. And I've got I haven't heard much from Adam Smith. He's got to be scared now. And I wanted to ask you this. Has he agreed to any debates? Have you debated him yet? What's the status on that? Because if you are seeing this progressive star rising who's running against you, and after seeing what happened to Joe Crowley, he's got to be afraid, right? So has he agreed to to debate you? That it'd be amazing if he could drop out and endorse you.
That'd be great.
Right? Has he agreed to debate you? What's been his response to you? Because he has to be afraid of you now.
So I will give credit where credit is due. He is at least showing up and engaging with me in events and things like that. Joe Crowley's biggest mistake is he brushed Andrea off constantly, or Alexandria off constantly. But Adam has showed up to the first roundtable I ever did, which was terrifying for me. But it was the Washington State Bernie-crats, and I've come a long way since then. And so have all of us as different organizations have come a long way in the year and change it's been since that debate. We haven't had any formal debates. We are both sitting at a forum on Saturday. This is with the League of Women Voters. And then we're pretty much just pushing up to primary. To his credit, one of the reasons that a debate is not likely to happen is because the Republicans have strong-armed Congress and are keeping them there until the end of August. So they refuse, I believe it's oh my gosh, I'm blanking on his name. Whatever. What's his name? I don't care about him. He refuses to let them break session until the end of August. So
okay.
It's really, really difficult for them to get debates scheduled, to meet their obligations, to do their jobs, and then also debate and be out and campaign. So I do recognize that it's not necessarily a fault of the incumbent. I would be, of course, I'm always open to it. It's also really difficult in my mind to debate with a guy who's just going to parrot whatever I say, which is really funny to me. I mean, I'm flattered that he's suddenly parroting everything that I have to say in the media, but it's difficult to debate a guy like that. So I'm not sure a debate would be terribly exciting.
Right. He's a swagger jacker.
Exactly. He's, again, riding the coattails of a progressive woman. That's what he's doing. That's his MO. So
right. No, and I wanted to, because really, I look at you as a progressive leader, and I wanted to talk to you as a progressive leader, as someone who's just huge in this movement, about abolish ICE. Because when you go by your policy platform, the brand new Congress Justice Democrat policy platform, they're all populist. But one, I think, important argument and really a point of pushback that we hear is that why are you guys all coming out in favor, myself included, of this abolish ICE policy when it's not popular just yet? What is your response to that?
Because right now, abolishing ICE it really is the moral movement forwards. That's part of what we're in. We're in an era of ethical politics, and abolishing ICE is a cornerstone of that ethical movement. We see kids kept in cages, families being separated, houses being raided. There's teachers being deported in the middle of class. When Donald Trump took office, he said he's only going to get rid of the bad ones. I'm sorry, a hardworking father of 3 who's being torn away from his kids is not one of the bad ones. The guy in South Seattle that was just taken and seized out of his workplace while he was working. He was just at his distillery or at his ale house where he was, I think he was a busboy. He was just doing his job. He wasn't one of the bad ones. And it's ICE that's basically turned into this form of corporate brown shirts that's now going out and following the directives of God only knows who, wherever their corporate overlords tell these politicians to direct them. And it's kind of taken a turn. They become a violent organization. They become a violent part of the violence against the immigrant community. They're a symbol of oppression of our immigrant brothers and sisters. And it's our obligation to step up and protect them from that. As progressives, one of our main goals is to be the shield for the people who are marginalized. It's to be that amplified voice for people that feel that they don't have a voice. And when we talk about abolishing ICE, we're not just talking about abolishing ICE. We're talking about elevating the voices of our immigrant community, making sure that they're heard. They live in fear of this organization, of people reporting them to it. So when we talk about abolishing it, we also need to talk about what we want to do to move forwards away from ICE as well. Right now, we are a country that rips families apart, that puts kids in cages, but that's not the country that we want to be. We want to be the country that has a department, something like a Department of Immigrant and Refugee Services, right? Where we are able to help pair immigrant communities with different labor sources, get them into jobs, help them get green cards, apply for visas, talk to them about what their options are for amnesty. If we take the resources that we're expending in ICE and the DHS and Customs and Border Patrol, and we dissolve those organizations and we put them into this new department, we can actually start having a positive effect on our immigrant community. We can still enforce things like, undocumented citizens and things like that, or undocumented persons and things like that. We can still enforce the border strength. We can still have our border patrol and things like that. But our purview shifts away from stopping people from coming in and throwing them out once they get here to how do we help these people that are here live a dignified life? How do we help them create their American dream? How do we help them figure out what that means? How do we help them become a part of our country that they so desperately want to be a part of? It shifts our focus away from this culture of violence that we've become known for around the world, and it puts us back into the culture of humanitarianism and morality. So abolishing ICE is a cornerstone. It's one of the first things we have to do if we want to start making that transition away from that culture of violence, if that makes sense.
No, totally. And the way that you explain it is really important, because with everyone like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, yourself talking about it and, really making the moral case for abolishing ICE, we are in fact changing minds really quickly, actually. I think it was 43% of Democratic voters now support abolishing ICE, whereas if you go back a couple of months ago, not even a plurality supported it. So if you make a moral argument, I think that you get people to think differently about specific political issues, and it's really important. So that's why I think that people who are at the forefront of this abolish ICE movement really are progressive leaders. So definitely, I think it's super important. Now, one thing that I can't not ask you is because let's say hypothetically you win your primary, there's another huge blow up with Sarah Smith. You go on MSNBC, you go on Fox News. The number one question that you're probably going to get asked, well, Sarah, you support Medicare for all. How are we going to pay for this? And it's the hackiest argument that I hate, that you hate.
Me too.
So my soul dies a little bit each time I hear that.
Sure. Yeah, I know. Everyone's like, how are we going to pay for it? And I mean, the fact is, we already are. Mm-hmm. We're already paying for Medicare. We're already paying for socialized programs like single payer healthcare within the VA. The problem is we have all this money that we've wrapped up in things that don't actually matter or affect taxpayers. So we have this gigantic budget that all we have to do is we have to rebalance our budget, reprioritize what we're spending our money on. And then I am sure that we can redirect a lot of that money into single payer Medicare for all. And I mean, the other thing is that people aren't talking about is they're not talking about, they think they're separate, but they're not. Auditing the Pentagon and the Department of Defense. Because that's going to give us a realistic scope for our military budget, which is going to change the entire congressional budget once we do that. So single payer healthcare is not a crazy thing. It is something we're already paying for. It is something taxpayers are already putting money into. When you check your paycheck, you already see Medicare, but we capped it at retirement age that you could actually start getting onto Medicare. That was never the dream that it was founded on. Initially, Medicare was supposed to be expanded into a single payer system. So that's why the taxation system around it was set up the way it was. We just have to employ it the way that it was supposed to be set up. But when we have single payer, we start to save money over time, and taxpayers are actually going to see a lowering of their costs. But I mean, we see it with our premiums right now too, right? When we pay for health insurance, we're not just paying for us, we're paying for uninsured persons, we're paying for hospital administrative fees, hospital rising costs, falsely inflated costs for things like a bag of saline. We're already paying these outlandish medical costs that we shouldn't be paying anyway. So if we move into a single payer system, it's money that's already been coming out of our paycheck. We're just using it in the most humane, correct way. Right.
And it's interesting to hear you talk about that because I think that every candidate at this point who's running for Congress, who supports, tuition-free public college, Medicare for all, you're going to be asked this by mainstream media pundits. So I'm glad to hear that you all you have such phenomenal responses to it. Because it bugs me because it really is, I think it's just common sense. And if we could find a way to pay for the Iraq war, what was that, $2.4 trillion?
I think it's $6.4 trillion total with all the wars in the Middle East. Look, it's only going to cost about $1 trillion. It's going to cost 1/6 of the amount of money we've spent on all these wars to pay for healthcare for all of our people forever. So I'm going to go ahead and say I'd rather spend that 1/6 of our Middle East war budget on, not dying.
Yeah. Spending money on improving lives versus spending money on death and destruction.
And, fighting oil wars and blockading Somalia and areas where we don't want them to move oil tankers. I feel like that money could be better spent on we the people.
Right. It's almost as if when we give up our hard-earned cash, we should get something in return.
Yeah, it's like taxation is an agreement between the people and the government that the government's going to take care of our basic needs. And right now, the government's not fulfilling that obligation. So we just need progressives in Congress who aren't going to be like, but how will we pay for it? And who are going to look and say, with that money right there,
exactly.
we've already got it. And I actually had this conversation with a friend of mine. He's a great guy. He's actually a libertarian, really cool person, super interesting guy to talk to. But I told him, what if I told you nothing about your taxes really changes very much for you as a middle class person? Nothing changes. You don't see any fluctuations in your paycheck, but suddenly you have healthcare. Suddenly you have good roads. Suddenly your kids can go to college without you having to save for a college fund. Wouldn't that be great? And he's like, that would be amazing. I'm like, cool. That's what I want to go to Congress and do.
And when you frame it like that, there's no way that a normal working class American won't like that message. It's going to resonate because you're going there, even if they agree with you ideologically or your political philosophy, your intentions are altruistic. And one reason why I like Justice Democrats and brand new Congress and candidates like you is because you don't take corporate money. So when you say something, I know that that's your authentic policy position. So can you kind of explain to me why not taking corporate PAC money. I think I asked you this before, but it's so fascinating. Why is disadvantaging yourself and not taking corporate money so important in this day and age?
Oh boy, it's the new era of politics. I mean, we want to make sure that our representatives in Congress are public servants. We want to make sure that when they're taking money, it's from people and it's not from corporations who have special interests, because it's going to sound ridiculous when I say this, but it is so silly to me that we have politicians who take thousands and thousands and thousands from corporations, and they come out on this platform of, I'm going to fight for working people and I'm going to prioritize working people over corporations, and we're supposed to believe that they're going to fight for working people and not the corporations who paid them to say that. And it's kind of ridiculous that a lot of these Democrats that are still taking corporate money are trying to jump onto the populist platform and jump onto this whole working people first platform, while at the same time, stocking their coffers with money from corporations. Right. We cannot trust that someone has a vested interest in the people if they've still got their hands tied by big businesses. And one of the best things about not taking it is I can say things like Amazon created the homelessness problem in Seattle and they should be held accountable for it. And I don't have to worry about my funding. I have nothing to fear, because I'm not here for Amazon. I'm here for those homeless people. I'm here for those displaced persons. I'm here for those houseless persons. I'm here for those people. And so when I say that stuff, I don't have to worry about whether or not I'm going to be able to run my campaign the next day. I'm just fine waking up the next day and knowing that I'm going to be able to go into my office, take calls, write emails, go knock on doors, and feel no kind of difference to my funding. When we have public servants that are so committed to their job that that's what they want to do, they want to only serve the public, they can show it by rejecting corporate PAC money. And everyone thinks that the effects are only in your vote, right? They're only in what you vote for. That's actually not true. They're in who the effects are seen in who you associate with. They're seen in what legislation you sit on and you wait for and you don't push forward yourself. It's seen in what you talk about in your speeches, what you talk about in the media, how you present yourself when you talk about things, what you are and are not afraid to say. Because you get a lot of these representatives who are like, oh yeah, I'm in favor of Medicare for all, single payer. And then they go on CNN and they're like, universal access to healthcare is a good thing. And I'm like, no, single payer Medicare for all, single payer healthcare is a good thing. And they just do that. They play that little game. But that's how you see the effects of corporate PAC money in these representatives. And some of them I think truly believe it doesn't affect their vote. And sure, it might not affect how you vote yes or no, but it's going to affect on what you push through Congress. It's going to affect the committees that you sit on. It's going to affect the people you associate with. It's going to affect the connections you make. It's going to affect who you go talk to in your community. It's going to affect where you go talk to people in your community. So the effects are more than just yes or no votes. It's so much bigger than that. And when you reject corporate money, when you're only funded by the people, you don't have to worry about any of that. That's a lot of work to keep straight. I'd rather just not take money from corporations, take money only from people, and just focus on doing the right thing, which is fighting for working class Americans in this country.
It feels like it's liberating. Like, why go to Congress and be someone's puppet?
I don't like that. I barely like my husband telling me I have to do the dishes. Like, I don't want to be beholden to anybody. I'm in this race, and I'm trying to run for this position, and I want to be a representative because I want to be a representative for the people. And it doesn't make any sense to me to be compromised by whether or not a corporation donates to me. So for them to say, oh, we'll donate to your campaign if you promise to support this legislation, or if you promise to abandon your position on this or this. No, because my platform is holistic. Every single plank in that platform, every single part of the progressive platform ties together to the rest of those planks. So to abandon one is to abandon the whole thing. It's to abandon my moral compass. It's to abandon my values and my ethics as a person. So to turn around and take corporate money when that's on the table, it just is counterintuitive. It's completely antithetical to what I'm running to do. I don't want to represent that corporation. I want to help that person on the street who is having trouble making ends meet, who can't afford rent, who can't afford childcare, who can't afford to go to the doctor, who's terrified of walking around someplace because they have an ounce of weed in their pocket. That's the person I want to fight for, because we all know the country we are today, right? We're a country of I've said it before, a country of violence. We're a country of despair. Our American dream is broken to the point that nobody knows what it is anymore. We're a country of insecurity. We're a country that has no surety of what its future looks like. But those of us who are running without corporate PAC money know the kind of future that we want. We know the kind of country that we want to be. And so we reject corporate money because that's the only way we're going to be able to fight to make that vision real, uncompromised, and unbought. It's the only way to make it happen.
100%. And I think that even individuals who don't agree with your policy positions or disagree with some policy positions, they can still respect that it's your policy positions. It's not something that was cooked up, by lobbyists. This is your policy positions, and you are operating based on what you think is right and morally necessary, in a modern egalitarian society. So that's why I think that even if there are Republican candidates that don't take corporate money, even if I disagree with them on every single policy issue, I think there's that respect for them just having that opinion themselves. And I kind of feel like that's why progressives have this really widespread, marketable approach to politics, because centrists, maybe, even if they might not agree with you, maybe some conservatives, they've got to respect it. That's why I think Bernie Sanders was so popular among moderates, because if somebody is not taking corporate money, that tells you a lot about their character and what's fueling those policy positions that they're taking. So look, before we go, this is probably going to be the last time that I have you on before the primary. Can you make your last pitch? And can you also tell us what we can do to support your campaign and everything that's needed? Because I know that, time's running out. So what can we do in this last couple of days to make sure you defeat Adam Smith?
Of course, there is so much that you can do. So I know I kind of talked about it. I can go off on a little bit of I get on a soapbox a little bit.
I love it.
But I mean, I meant every word that I said, and I believe in this platform. It didn't take corporate consultants. It didn't take policy consultants or policy analysts to tell me what is right. I'm running because I know what is right, because it doesn't take someone else in my ear walking me through it, because I know that the things we're fighting for as progressives are important. They're essential. If we want to make change, now is the time to make that change. 2018 that's the beginning of the big blue wave. That's the beginning of the progressive takeover. That's the beginning of righting the ship and seizing our seat back at the congressional table. Because, I mean, Mike Hepburn down in Florida says it all the time. If they're not going to give us a seat, then we are going to pull up a folding chair. But 2018 is the year that we're going to do it. So if you want to get on board with my campaign, if this progressive, big, bold vision, if fire and salt and all the things in between are what you want representing our district here in the 9th, then go to votesarahsmith.com. You have votesarahsmith.com/call will let you do phone banking and text banking, which is huge for us right now because we have mail-in ballots. We're trying to remind people to get those back in the mail, get them in the drop boxes. Votesarahsmith.com/volunteer. We have canvassing all the time for the next 3 weeks. You can go and pick a time slot. We're going to be all over the district. But we have a big canvassing team. It's a lot of fun. We feed you. I promise. I'll bribe you with food. Come knock some doors with me. But our weather is great, too. It gets you outside and walking around and talking about things that matter to you. One of the big things you can do, too, is in the last push here, we could really use some donations, too. Votesarahsmith.com/donate is the way you can get to do that. We're trying to raise some money to keep our office lights on. We're going to need to get our own office internet soon, and we cannot use the building's Wi-Fi anymore. There's not enough ports. So we're trying really hard to get that. We've talked about providing reusable water bottles to our team to see if we can get some of that going. We want to order some postcards. We still have a lot of time and a lot of things we need to do before the 7th. So if you can go to votesarahsmith.com/donate, if you can make any kind of monetary donation, that would be incredibly helpful. Votesarahsmith.com/volunteer if you're in the area. Come on out, join us for canvassing or events, or votesarahsmith.com/call. If you're not local, you can call from the comfort of your own pajamas in your own home. I have done it myself. But there's a lot of opportunity to still get involved with these campaigns. This is our final push. We're optimistic. We think we can do it. We believe in our message. We think the people of the 9th do too. So if you really do want to get on board with us, votesarahsmith.com, you can find a ton of information.
Well, look, we are going to all be watching that race very closely. If you win, I might not be able to even contain myself this time. I nearly lost it with Ocasio-Cortez.
I cried when she won.
I couldn't contain myself. I was jumping up and down, and I may actually lose it this time. So we're gonna be watching.
I sat down in my kitchen and I cried. So
we were both kind of mass tweeting that day. I remember.
Yeah, we were. We were just all over the place. And Rob Ryerson and I were texting. I was texting Paula. I was texting everybody I could think of. I was like, she's gonna win.
I could not contain myself. It was. I mean, I didn't go to sleep until I think like 5 a.m., 6 a.m. It was. I couldn't.
1 or 2 in the morning, and I was up by 5. It was.
it was a lot. So yeah, I think you could do it. So we're all rooting for you. Man,
Thank you.
We're all going to be glued to our computers that day. So good luck, kick ass, and we're looking forward to it.
Woo, thanks.
Support this podcast by becoming a patron at patreon.com/Humanist Report.